Emma Hayes lived in a small, fog-covered town near the coast of Washington. The kind of place where the mornings smelled like damp earth and old secrets. Her days were quiet, carefully arranged like the books on the shelves of the cozy independent bookstore where she worked. But behind her gentle smile was a woman slowly fading into the background of her own life. Emma was 36, divorced, and quietly grieving things she never got to say out loud. 3 years ago, her husband, Ryan, left not in anger, not in cruelty, but in silence. A marriage that had once felt like a warm sweater had grown thin, frayed, and distant. They'd stopped talking long before they stopped trying. When he walked out the door, Emma didn't beg him to stay. She simply watched him leave and then closed the door behind him like someone sealing a box she never planned to open again. Since then, loneliness had become her quiet companion. She cooked for one, went to bed with a book instead of a body, and convinced herself that stillness was peace. She stopped waiting for the phone to ring. Emma had learned that longing was a slow ache, one you learn to live with like a limp after an old wound. She told herself she was fine, but sometimes, late at night, when the rain tapped against the windows and the wind curled around the house like a sigh, she would feel it, the ache, the emptiness, the deep wish to be seen again, touched again, loved again, but she didn't believe that kind of closeness was meant for her anymore. Then came Caleb Monroe. He arrived just after the rain, moving into the cabin next door, an old, weathered place that hadn't been lived in for years. Emma noticed him through the window first. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn flannel shirt and jeans with a tear at the knee. There was something rugged about him, but not rough. He carried his sadness the way a man carries old photographs, invisible to the eye, but always near. She found herself watching him, curious but careful, until one day he was outside, struggling with a heavy box marked memories. Something about the word made her chest tighten. She stepped outside, heart beating faster than she wanted it to. "Need a hand?" she offered, her voice soft but steady. Caleb looked up, startled, then smiled, a slow, tired kind of smile that still managed to warm her. "Only if you've got to," he said, and just like that, the ice between them cracked a little. They carried the box into his cabin, brushing hands once in the doorway. It was just a touch, but it lingered. Emma left soon after, telling herself not to read too much into it. But that evening, she found a note left on her porch. Just a small piece of paper folded in half, with neat handwriting that read, "Thank you. I think we both moved here to escape something. Maybe that means something." Caleb, she held the note for a long time. Her fingers trembled slightly. She hadn't felt noticed in years, truly noticed. Not for what she could give or how well she kept things together, but just for being there. For being herself. And now there was a man next door with tired eyes and gentle hands who had already seen past the walls she'd spent years building, and for the first time in a very long time, Emma didn't feel entirely alone. Emma didn't answer Caleb's note right away. She left it on her kitchen counter for days, pretending it didn't mean as much as it did. But the truth was, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Not just noticed, but seen. Still, her heart was cautious. She had lived behind her quiet routines for so long, it felt easier to stay hidden. Yet fate or something like it kept pulling them together. They ran into each other at the town's Saturday market, both reaching for the last bag of locally roasted coffee. He let her take it, with a smile that made her cheeks flush. Then came the walk, slow, accidental ones through the woods behind their cabins, with coffee in hand and stories slipping out like secrets they didn't know they still held. Caleb didn't pry, but he asked just enough to make her feel like she mattered. He wanted to know what music she listened to when she couldn't sleep. What book had once broken her heart? What made her cry? What made her stop? Bit by bit, Emma found herself opening. She told him about her mother, how losing her to cancer left a silence nothing could fill. She spoke of her dream to be a writer, a dream she'd locked away when her college professor told her she wasn't good enough. Caleb didn't interrupt. He listened with a kind of focus that made her chest ache. When she finished, he didn't offer advice. He just said, "That's beautiful. You should write again." And somehow, she believed him. But she wasn't the only one with pieces of the past still clinging to her. One late afternoon, as the light spilled through the trees in soft gold, Caleb invited her in. His home was still a bit of a mess, half-unpacked boxers, unframed photos leaned against the walls. But it felt real, lived in, safe. He poured her tea and opened up in a way most men don't. He talked about his job as a photojournalist, how the rush of capturing stories around the world had once filled him with purpose. But lately, he admitted, He felt tired. After his father passed away in Vermont, he felt untethered. The grief didn't knock him down, it just quietly pulled everything loose. So he came west, hoping the silence might bring him back to himself. Emma watched him as he spoke, the way his hands moved when he got nervous, the way his voice dropped when he mentioned his father. And in that moment, she realized she wasn't the only one living with quiet sorrow. He was just better at hiding it. The evening grew darker, and the conversation slower. She sat beside him on the worn couch, their knees almost touching. When he reached for her hand just gently, just to hold it felt like too much too soon, Emma pulled back, her eyes darting to the floor. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm just not ready." Caleb didn't let go of her completely. Instead, he nodded, softly, with a calm she didn't expect. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "I just want to know you, even the broken parts." Something in her chest cracked, not painfully, more like a window opening after a long winter. She left that night with her heart full of questions and warmth she didn't know what to do with, but before she could close her door behind her, his voice reached her again, low and steady in the dark. "Emma, what are you still afraid of?" Winter came early that year. The pine trees outside Emma's cabin were dusted in snow, and the world felt quieter than usual, like even time was slowing down. Emma found herself thinking about Caleb more than she wanted to admit. There was something about him that stayed with her, even when he wasn't around. The way his eyes softened when he listened, or how he always waited for her to speak without rushing her thoughts. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper. A kind of emotional gravity that pulled her in gently, even as she tried to keep her distance. She didn't know how to explain it, but when he was near, she felt like she was standing in warm light after a long time in the cold. And that scared her. Because real love meant letting someone close enough to see the parts of you that didn't shine, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. One evening, just before Christmas, Caleb knocked on her door holding a photo album. It was wrapped in an old flannel shirt, the buttons half done like a man trying to keep something fragile warm. "I want to show you something," he said. Inside were photos not of his work, but of his life. Childhood birthdays with messy cakes, his dog Charlie sleeping on a sunlit porch, his mother in her rose garden, laughing at something off camera, and near the end, a photo of him and his father, both with tired smiles, taken just a few months before his father passed. "He always said there were two kinds of people in the world," Caleb said, his voice soft. "Those who carry secrets, and those who are brave enough to share them." He looked at her then. "I've been both." Emma felt her throat tighten. No one had ever let her into their world like this, not like this. And maybe it was the snow falling gently outside, or the closeness of that quiet room, but she found herself telling Caleb the one truth she'd never said out loud. "I stayed with Ryan for too long," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not because I loved him, but because I was afraid no one else would ever choose me." There it was. Raw, unfiltered, real. She expected Caleb to look away, but he didn't. Instead, he reached out slowly and took her hand, like someone holding a fragile thing with care. "Emma," he said, "you don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to let someone in." His touch wasn't bold, was steady, honest, and in that moment, something shifted, not in a big, dramatic way, but quietly, like ice beginning to melt beneath soft sunlight. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to hide who she was. She didn't have to be strong or quiet or put together. She could just be. They sat there for a long while, not speaking, letting the silence speak for them. And when their fingers intertwined, it didn't feel rushed or reckless. It felt earned. Like two people who had finally stopped running. That night, Emma didn't invite Caleb to stay, but she didn't close her door all the way when he left, either. And as she stood there, watching him walk back to his cabin under the stars, she knew something was happening between them. Something real, something slow and deep. It wasn't just romance, it was healing. Asterisk as spring slowly returned to the quiet Washington town, Emma found herself changing in ways she hadn't expected. The snow melted, the air warmed, and the walls around her heart began to fall away, one gentle moment at a time. Life with Caleb wasn't rushed. There were no grand gestures, no over-the-top confessions, just quiet mornings, long walks, and deep conversations that lingered like the scent of rain. He never pushed her. He never needed her to be more than what she was. Instead, he saw her for everything she had survived, everything she still hoped for, even if she hadn't admitted it out loud. Their connection was soft and slow, like a song you hum under your breath because it stays with you, and somewhere between borrowed books and shared silences, Emma started to believe that real love might still be possible for her. One morning, she woke up to find a note slipped into one of the novels Caleb had returned. His handwriting had become familiar now, like a voice she trusted. "You're not hard to love," it said. "You've just been loving in the wrong direction." She read it 3 times before pressing it to her chest, tears quietly slipping down her cheeks. He had this way of saying the exact thing her heart had been waiting years to hear. And without making a scene, he was helping her heal in ways no one else had ever tried. Slowly, Emma let him in. She let him hold her when the nights felt too long. She let him see her without makeup, hair messy, mood low, and he never flinched. If anything, he leaned in closer. Their first kiss didn't come like a storm. It came on the porch one quiet evening, when the sky turned orange and the scent of pine filled the air. She had her head resting against his shoulder, her fingers gently tracing the edge of his sleeve. He looked at her, not with hunger, but with something deep tenderness. Emma turned to him and whispered, "I don't know how to do this anymore." Caleb smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "There's no right way," he said. "We just keep showing up for each other." And then he kissed her soft, patient, unhurried. It wasn't a kiss that asked for anything. It offered everything. And in that moment, Emma felt something break free inside her, the fear, the doubt, the loneliness she had worn like a second skin. It all slipped away. The days that followed weren't perfect, but they were real. They laughed, argued about music, cooked messy dinners, and even planted a small garden together behind Caleb's cabin. But through it all, there was this quiet rhythm between them, a sense that they were building something strong, honest, and lasting. Emma started writing again. Just little pieces, poems, letters she never sent. Short stories about women who had been broken and found a way back to themselves. Caleb would read them over coffee and say, "You're telling the truth people are too afraid to say out loud." One night, as they sat by the firelight, wrapped in a shared blanket, Caleb looked at her with that same gentle steadiness. "You're not alone anymore, Emma," he said. And this time, she didn't cry. She smiled, because she finally believed it. He hadn't just touched her heart, he had carefully undressed her loneliness. One secret at a time, until all that was left between them was warmth. And the quiet, certain feeling of being truly loved.